Hi, everyone. I wanted to talk about some of the issues that I raised in my syntax class. The title of today's talk is Decentering Classroom Discourse in Syntax Class, Lessons from Global English's Paradigm. Although my research interest and research orientation are more on applied linguistics side, the application of syntax, phonetics, and phonology are my favorite areas to work on. I enjoy doing syntax, phonetics, and phonology. The first time I took the course on phonetics and phonology, mostly in English in 2006 in my undergraduate level in Nepal. Later, in 2010, I moved to Kathmandu, the capital city of Nepal, to study my graduate level or master's degree. And I took an advanced syntax and phonetics and phonology courses again. I read University Grammar in Syntax and several other books on phonetics and phonology. When I think of these two courses and classroom pedagogies, my professor's teaching discourse was entirely focused on American or British English. Back then, I thought syntax, phonetics, and phonology courses were only for American or British English. My syntax, phonetics, and phonology professors would come to the class, give lectures to about 200 and 300, 200 to 300 students in a single classroom on phonetics and phonology of the general American and received pronunciation that we called RP, IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet, vowels and consonants, and several other features of phonetics and phonology. And I worked really hard to learn these signs and symbols from IPA and practiced with my colleagues, I still remember, for months and months, even years, and practiced British and American English phonology, RP or GE. My professors never talked about various Englishes and their phonetics and phonologies. Back then, my understanding was to study phonetics and phonology was to learn received pronunciation or British English. Later, I started reading about Englishes in global contexts, many Englishes, global Englishes. I found that the phonetics and phonology of these global Englishes were different. However, an exciting thing is that, once again, in my PhD program in linguistics and applied linguistics, I'm taking the courses such as syntax, phonetics, and phonology. The difference in the classroom language while teaching phonetics and phonology now and then is that now my professor provides example from, and many examples from global Englishes such as Indian English. In the classroom, there are different people who speak different Englishes, and we all are supposed to work on our own English while working on the classroom class assignments. For example, we are asked to measure different sounds, vowels and consonants, and their formants, F1, F2, and F3, of our own English with the help of different tools such as Karat, and place them in the vowel chart and compare with other people or other Englishes. The professor also keeps repeating while providing examples that this is in my English. The sound may not have the same measurement or may not be the same in your English, or the sound might be different in other Englishes, such as Malaysian English. This indicates that everyone has their own language based on their socio-linguistic reality. Now, I realize that classroom pedagogy and discourse of phonetics and phonology has been shifted from one English to many Englishes. And this is so wonderful that will help students understand the diversity in English and development of different global Englishes and provide them with awareness of global Englishes. And this will also prepare students to admit diverse use of English. But the problem is with the course called Syntax that I'm taking. The classroom discourse in this course, in this class, is full of native speakerism, meaning that the focus is on one variety of American English. I expected my professor of syntax to at least discuss the diversity of English or global Englishes while working in the structural representation of English syntax, particularly while drawing the trees. However, I kept waiting, but that day never came. The surprising moment in the classroom almost every day was that my syntax professor would draw tree from a sentence and ask a question, something like, what do you think native speakers of English about this sentence? And a couple of students who did not speak any additional language, just spoke one variety of American English, would talk and answer this question, and rest of the class, almost 95%, never engaged in this question because they did not speak the particular variety of English, American English, that was practiced and used in the classroom. They spoke different other Englishes, such as Indian English, Cambodian English, British English, Vietnamese, and many more. I kept thinking about this kind of dynamics of the syntax class. For example, I kept thinking something like, what if my professor had changed their question from, what do you think, native speakers, about this sentence, to, what do you all think about this question? The whole classroom would have been engaged in this question. But this sort of othering atmosphere in the classroom, though my professor was great personally, and I really liked them, and they did not do this on purpose, I didn't find it inclusive whatsoever. I waited for months, but this kind of discourse never changed. The focus was on native speakers of particular American variety of English. Then one day, the professor was lecturing on universal grammar and one correct way of using English language, that is one variety of American English. I asked following questions. And the questions are in the dialogue form. For example, me intervening in the middle of the lecture while they were giving. I raised my hand and asked a question. Professor, I have a quick question. Professor goes, go ahead. Me, Professor, I was wondering, why does English syntax only talks about one variety of English or American English in our classroom here and native speaker of English, since there are many Englishes around the world? How does native speaker only and one variety of American English address sociolinguistic realities of Englishes? How can you claim that there is only one so-called standard English that we need to follow when we practice syntax in the classroom? Also, does it happen in reality? It is true that universal grammar mostly assumes a native speaker at the center. I don't think it is the case with English anymore. Don't you think the classroom discourse while teaching syntax should be changed from, what do you think, native speakers, about this particular sentence, to, what do you think, class? Professor goes like, yeah, but we can't use Cambodian, such as Cambodian English because we all know American English. These questions created discussion in the classroom, and my colleagues started sharing their opinions. Colleague one goes like, well, I think we are in the US context, that's why we are using American English. Colleague two goes, I think one needs to learn basic syntax in American English as people share their language, this language in common. But these concerns from my colleagues were somehow convincing, but I kept listening to my colleagues as they were trying to convince me. That was great to know about my colleagues' multiple opinions, and it sounded like above mentioned questions that I asked were really weird, and nobody raised these questions in the syntax classes before. However, my questions were not to question the English that was exemplified and used as an example in the classroom, but my questions were to understand why professors in the syntax class orient their discussion to only one English. Why my professor was not able to at least say in the classroom that the examples given in these classrooms were only from one variety of American English. There are different varieties of English, and these structural representation or the tree diagrams, such as negation, determiner phrase, and complementizer, may be different in other Englishes. I know people have been doing syntax in one so-called standard English, particularly English syntax, for years and years. That's why they are not comfortable with my questions. But it is the time to debunk and decenter this unrealistic discourse and include different realities of English in syntax class, as far as English syntax is concerned, and same is the case with syntax of other languages. And I end my talk with a final note here that if syntax can't accept diversity and multiple truth in the language use, then my question is, why do we even need to teach syntax at the university level?